Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Lori, and today I'm going to do a video on one of the really powerful pieces of information I received when I was in New Mexico. Like I've said in my other videos, everything that I share in my videos are my own personal experience. So this information that came into me came in from these light beings that I work with, directly into me, and it felt much like I was listening to a book on tape or something. Like this information just started coming in and I just started speaking it in a recorder, and that's where this information is coming from. And like I've said in other videos, I don't do research. So I don't look up or Google search or figure out if what I'm hearing is correct. I just trust deeply in what I'm hearing, and I share it because they tell me to. This video is going to be a little bit different than what I normally share. This video is going to be about the different types of races, alien races that have been participating on the Earth's ascension process and the history of Earth, who these races are, who these beings are, and what they were doing here, and the impact they had, and that they are no longer here. And so it's not a normal video. There are a couple of these that I'm going to do because that is the main reason why I went to New Mexico. And so it's important that this information gets out. I'm not exactly sure why it's so important, but I think that like all the other things that are happening on the planet, we are shifting out of old paradigms. And there is a fear-based paradigm around quote-unquote aliens, the Greys, the Anunnaki, alien abduction, the hybridization program. I think there's hashtags out there on Instagram that say negative alien agendas. So there's this huge consciousness that is continuing to grow that is based on the past. It is not current. It is not in this present moment. And so as I'm speaking, if this triggers you, turn it off. If this resonates with you, keep listening. This may be a longer video than normal. So sit back, relax, maybe pause it, go get a cup of tea or coffee or something to munch on, because I don't know how long this one's going to be. It's going to take a little bit longer for me to describe and explain things. Which is part of the reason why I took a whole week off after New Mexico to let it all integrate. So one of the things I want to state before we move into this information is understand that there are many different realities, okay? There are many different timelines happening right now. There are many different realities that all of us live in. They're all happening at the same time. Okay, depending upon where your consciousness is focused on, what your vibration is resonating with, and what you're believing in, what you're putting your focus and attention on. What do you believe to be your reality, your truths? And what's happening is there are many new realities and new paradigms that have opened up as we shift into these higher states of consciousness. Shifting into higher states of consciousness allows us to walk into higher states, higher paradigms, new awarenesses, new belief systems. What the challenging part for the human being is to release the past and to actually start to open up to, wow, this may actually be true. So the aliens, the abductions, the dark forces, the infiltration, the negative forces on the planet, all of these things are based on our history, okay? And so when people are discussing these things and talking about these things, it's very possible that people are, it's possible that people may still be experiencing these types of things, although they are slowly moving out, so less of that happening. But a lot of what's happening is connecting to the past and bringing that past into the now. So you can very easily connect to the past and bring that consciousness into your now so that that is the present moment. But that's actually not what's actually energetically happening. So let me begin. Let me start with what quote unquote aliens are. Why am I using the word alien? I use the word alien because it's the easiest way in the human language to describe these fourth dimensional beings. So the fourth dimension is obviously in between the third dimension and the fifth dimension. The fourth dimension is where spirits go, right? So if somebody passes in your life and they're still around you, you can still feel them and hear them. That's the fourth dimension. And the angelic realm, they move themselves into the fourth dimension. A lot of times ascended masters will be in this fourth dimension. The fourth dimension allows us to feel, hear, access, and experience these beings in a much more tangible way. So we can almost see them. They have forms and figures. We can hear them. We can experience them. So when these beings move into a fourth dimensional space, we can access them a lot easier. The fourth dimension has duality. The fourth dimension has right and wrong. The fourth dimension is very similar to the third dimension. So there are beautiful, beautiful beings of light in the fourth dimension, and there are also dark, dark forces in the light beings, darker beings in the fourth dimension. Okay, so there's all of that in the fourth dimension. When you start to shift one space up into that fifth dimensional frequency, you get rid of duality. You get rid of right or wrong. You move into this unity consciousness. There's no separation. It's a higher state of consciousness. It's where the human is moving into, and it is where the earth has already shifted into. So that's how I can explain the fourth dimension. So these beings called the Greys. And I'm only speaking on what was given to me. I don't know much about the Greys. I don't know much about the Anunnaki. I don't know much about the reptilian race other than what was given to me. But I know there is a huge amount of species within the Grey race, okay? And the Anunnaki are also a part of the Grey race. The reptilians are separate. They're a different type of race. And for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, they have come onto the earth plane, onto the earth, and for the sake of understanding, it was for their own, they wanted this. They wanted to experience Earth. They wanted to see what the human form was all about. They wanted to understand how light was in a physical form. And because we have free will, they had to infiltrate. So they had to come in, and they did it in a way that was not in agreement with the human form, right? With humans. So they started coming in, many different types of races started coming in, and they started abducting humans. And this was thousands and thousands of years ago, so this is nothing new. And the reason they would abduct the human, and they actually took the entire physical form out of the bed or the couch or wherever the human was laying and sleeping. They would actually take the physical body and move it into whatever space they've created. Typically, these were either underground or in mountains, in higher states of consciousness, so in the fourth dimensional space. They would take these bodies, these human forms, physical forms, and they would experiment on them. They were dissecting them. They were trying to figure out, what is this? How can we learn from this? How can we create our own type of like hybrid, quote unquote, human? And it was all for their own benefit. It was not for the human benefit whatsoever. And from those experiments came the hybridization program. Okay, so that started a long, long time ago, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Hybridization program has been around for a very long time. The reason why it's becoming more and more prevalent in the last 60 years is because humans are finally starting to talk about it. But when humans were having these experiences hundreds of years ago, they thought they were crazy. They lost their minds. They knew they would get killed or be put in an institution or be put on medicine. All kinds of crazy stuff happened to people if they spoke about it. So they didn't speak about it. So this stuff has been going on for a very long time. And there were race wars, and these race wars were all about power, controlling the human bodies, controlling the who got what, how many bodies, how many humans can you get, how much information can you receive. The way they took the human form from the physical bed or from the couch, they would speed up the light inside the physical form. So remembering that it's all light, they would speed that light up inside the physical form enough to take the physical form into the fourth dimensional space and move it into these mountains or underground. A little bit challenging to kind of conceptualize, but again, remembering that everything is light, remembering that everything is energy, right? And that they have these abilities. So also, when you're dealing with fourth dimensional beings, they have way more access to knowledge, to information. They can manipulate energy way more than we can. And so they were able to do this. Now, typically they chose humans that were not, quote unquote, connected to their light. So evolved. They would try not to take, the less evolved the human was, the easier it was to take them. Because if you had an acute awareness as a human being, if you had an acute awareness of your own energy, maybe you were extremely empathic, if they started to raise the frequency in your physical body while you're laying there, you may wake up. It's happened to a lot of people, right? They wake up and they see these beings in the room. Or they'll wake up on the actual table, right? Being worked on. Those are beings that are a little bit more, quote unquote, awake or connected to the energy, because they have to move you into that higher state in order to do the work they're going to do on you. So, it was really, 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 really horrible. It was a horrible, horrible thing that happened. A lot of humans went through a lot of really, really horrific things. And it is part of our history. It's part of the Earth's history. But here's what happened. It started to get really big. It started to get bigger and expand these programs and these fourth dimensional beings, the Anunnaki and the Greys and the Reptilians and all the different races that come out of there. They were bombarding the planet, and they were jumping into human forms. So the reptilians loved to move into the human form. They would do it without, obviously, the human's consent, and they would suck the energy. They lived off of the prana, the living life force in the physical body. And so, and the Greys would come in. The Greys would come into the physical form so that they can learn more, and they would manipulate the mind. And the Anunnaki, they didn't move into the bodies. The Anunnaki never moved into the physical forms. The Anunnakis controlled humans' minds. So they would move into the human mind and control it. Very messed up, crazy crap that was happening. It's not happening anymore. It's not happening, and it's dwindling and dwindling. And it's been dwindling since the 80s. So that's part of why I'm sharing this. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. And what happened was, when the light quotient if you haven't listened to my last video, go listen to my last video, because I talk a little bit about the light quotient and how ascension works on the planet, and how the planet shifts into higher and higher, receives more and more light. And the more light that comes onto the planet, the light quotient starts to shift higher and higher. When the light quotient got to 50%, okay, which was around, what they were telling me was around the maybe 70s and 80s, towards the late 80s, okay? When the light quotient reached 50%, there was absolutely no way that ascension wasn't going to happen. So back in the 40s, when there was the clarion call, there was the human being got pretty complicated. They were very, very smart. The human being got really, really started to create the atomic bomb, started to kill off entire races of human beings. It started to get really bad. And so the clarion call went out in the 40s. And a lot of the first wave of volunteers that Dolores Cannon talks about, that's when they came in. Okay. And so that was the very initial beginning of the light beings, the millions of star beings that are working with us and working with the planet started to participate. But it wasn't until there was a 50% shift. So all of the light quotient got to 50%. Once it hit 50% and shifted, then there was absolutely no way that the earth and humanity wasn't going to move through the ascension process. So it was almost like, okay, we made it. We're okay now. Now there's absolutely no way that these earth beings and the earth aren't going to shift. Also what that means is that the light beings had the ability at that point, they could now come in and assist the earth. So prior to that 50% point, because humans have free will, okay, the beautiful light beings that we all came from, Palladians, Sirius, Arcturus, Andromeda, Antares, you name it, right? These are all high frequency beings. These are the star systems that seeded the planet in the very beginning. The Anunnaki did not seed this planet. The Greys did not seed this planet. Fourth dimensional beings didn't seed this planet. High frequency light beings seeded this planet millions of years ago. And so they understood the free will. Once the earth moved into that 50% mark, so it was like it tipped, the light beings could come in and assist, okay? And because they couldn't up until that point, because they couldn't come in and shift anything. They had to let earth and they had to let humanity move through its process. 50% mark was around the 70s and 80s, okay? And so what happened after that huge amount of volunteers came in? The call went out and a huge amount of volunteers came in the 40s and 50s and 60s, okay? And it shifted and then it became 50%. So in the 80s, when all of these fourth dimensional beings, these off-planet beings, were getting way out of control and it was severely impacting the light on the planet, these beautiful light beings came in and started to tear down, dismantle what was happening. And it was around the late 80s, okay? And I asked them when they were telling me this information, I said, well, how did you guys start doing this? Because there are major potent bases, quote, alien bases all over the world. But a lot of them are in the United States. For whatever reason, I didn't ask. And so I asked these beings that were giving me this information, I said, how did you do this? How did you start to dismantle these beings? And they said that they started to literally, they said, imagine a huge amount of light. So imagine taking like the Dulce or the Dulce, I don't know how you pronounce it, but the Dulce or the Dulce, New Mexico base. It's in a mountain. So they created this base inside the mountain and the human beings created the base underneath, drilling like tunnels underneath the mountain. They said, imagine all of this light being infiltrated, being poured, huge amounts, high frequency consciousness, high frequency light being poured down into these parts all over the world. And what that does is darker energies or lower frequency energies can't maintain themselves in higher states of consciousness. It's the same with us, right? We can't move into an eighth dimensional frequency. If an eighth dimensional frequency were to come down right now, it would be too much for us. We wouldn't be able to handle it. So what they did is they poured all of this light down, and they infiltrated these mountains and these sections inside the earth with so much light that when these beings tried to come in, each time they would try to come back in, they couldn't come in. They couldn't enter back into this force field, basically. So these high frequency beings created almost this energetic force field around all of these bases. And these light beings could not come in anymore. They couldn't infiltrate that field of light. And so very slowly, it took a while in terms of human time, it took a while, but these beings started to recognize that they didn't have the power anymore, that they couldn't come in anymore, that they were not able to infiltrate anymore. And what the light beings, these beautiful light beings, showed me is that they have, at this point right now, on an energetic level, they have created almost like a beautiful kind of sphere of light, like a grid of light around the planet. Okay, and these beings, the Anunnaki, the Greys, the Reptilians, they cannot access the earth any longer. They can't come in to this field of light any longer. And so what they've been, and I'll give you this beautiful analogy in a second, but what's been happening is that humans are staying connected to a consciousness and a belief system from the past. All of that horrific stuff happened very recently, very recently. Okay, the hybridization program was one of the longest sort of programs to dissolve energetically off the planet because of the emotional attachment humans had to it on an energetic level. So all of these things are now happening off planet, where with these beings, where they live in their fourth dimensional sphere, okay? And now they're trying to continue in some way, shape, or form, however they can, to still come in. Because what you have to understand is they want to participate in this. They want to be a part of this. But as spirits, they chose to be in that gray race. They chose to be in an Anunnaki, or they chose to be a reptilian. And those beings are not participating on the earth plane through the ascension. That's not their path. That's not their purpose. Their purpose is not to participate in this ascension process. Their purpose was to do everything they did in the past. Their purpose was to come in and infiltrate us. Their purpose was to come in and abduct us. So their purpose was to come in and figure out what all of this is and experiment with us and do everything that they did and have all of the wars, race wars that they did. And now it's complete. It's like everything in history. Once it happens, it's done. A war happens, a war is done. We move on. Right? Destruction and power and powerful kind of forces, beings, humans, whatever it is, come in, it all plays out, and then it's done, and then we move on to the next thing. So this huge part of our history, it's a very big part of our history that we're just now waking up to, is done. It's complete. But what's happening is people are still communicating with these beings, and these beings are very, very smart. Okay? They will manipulate the mind, and they will manipulate the human into thinking that they are here to assist, that they are here to participate and to help shift humanity. Okay? It's very, very potent. It's very powerful. It's not real. They cannot infiltrate any longer. They can't actually come into the earth plane. They can't come into a human being anymore. But here's what's happening. What's happening is humans are opening themselves up to engaging. And so when a human being engages with the Greys, when a human being engages with the Anunnaki or any other race that's in that sort of space, they actually are not doing it in this third dimensional physical form. So they have to move out into, on an etheric level, they have to move into that being's space. It's a little complicated. So just let this sink in, and you can come back and listen to it later, or you can just throw it all away. But there are, I believe, again, I don't listen to anything, but I know that there are people that channel the Greys, they channel Anunnaki, they receive all this information. Well, what they're doing is they're not doing it in the physical earth plane. They are doing it by connecting to these beings on an etheric level elsewhere. Okay, these powerful light beings that surround us and that are protecting us and that are assisting this ascension now won't allow it. So here's the analogy they gave me. It's a really awesome analogy. Imagine you're in a playground, okay, and it's recess time, and it's a 30-minute recess, and so all of you guys are playing. We're all playing on the playground. And we know the rules of the playground, right? I mean, you have to stay in a certain area, and there's rules, just like on Earth. There are universal laws, okay? Not all of us are aware of them, but there are universal laws that spirits, lights follow. On this playground, there are also teachers that have the little, the little whistle, right? So if somebody gets in a fight or they're doing something wrong, they'll blow the whistle and the person will have a timeout or whatever the rule is. They'll have to go sit back in the classroom, whatever. So what happened was, on the playground, is a big fight started happening. A huge fight started happening with a group of kids and another group of kids. And this group of kids were bullying this other group of kids. They were bullying them. They were beating them up. They were not following the rules, and they were not even from this school. So they were coming in and they were just being, they weren't peaceful, they weren't fun, they weren't loving, right? And so these two teachers blew the whistle and kicked that group of kids out. So the group of kids they kicked out are these fourth dimensional, quote unquote, aliens, the fourth dimensional beings, the Anunnaki, the Greys, the Reptilians, okay? They kicked them out. The two teachers with the whistles, those are the powerful, beautiful, amazing light beings that are here to help assist us in this process, in this journey. And so when they kicked them out, right, through all of that light they infiltrated on the planet, these group of kids, the Anunnaki and the Greys, were now outside of the playground. And so they were looking in. So they started looking in. They understood quite well that they were energetically no longer able to come back onto the playground. Even if they tried, they'd get kicked out. And so what they started doing, because they really, really, really wanted to participate, they really wanted to play, even though it was all for their own good, it was not for the other children's good, they started waving kids down and saying, hey, come over here, we want to share something with you, come here, we want to tell you something, it's so cool, it's so important, it's so awesome, come here, come here, come here. And certain kids would be like, you got kicked, I don't think so, you're not so fun, you're not so friendly, I don't like you. But other kids would be like, okay, let me go and play, let me go and see what they have to say, right? And so they would journey over to where these other kids were. So a human being might get called by the Greys, might have some sort of information coming in from the Anunnakis, or they might be getting some sort of stuff, right? And so they participate, they open up and they allow themselves to go etherically and experience whatever might be coming through. So the kid walks over, and the Anunnaki and the Greys and the Reptilians, what they're going to do, mostly the Greys and the Anunnaki, they're going to try to convince the child to play with them, but they have to play outside their regular playground, right? And they're going to want to play with them. And so maybe there are kids that sneak out and play and receive this information, but the information they're receiving, the information they're getting, has no impact on anything. So they might be playing, these kids might be telling them some really cool things, or really cool places to go and see when they get out of school or whatever it is. But when they come back onto the playground, it has no impact on where they're at. It has no impact on the rest of the recess that they're doing. It has no impact on their own physical form. It has no impact on anything. It's just these other kids trying to be a part of it in any way they know how to going forward. And so what's happening on the planet is thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people believe and are continuing to believe, and it's beautiful. This is just part of the process. They are believing that there is I think that a lot of people believe that certain people in powerful places, like musicians, actors, government officials, I think people in the kings and queens of England and things like that, people are believing that they have been, that the reptilians are inside of them, or they've been taken over by the Greys or things like that. So those things happened, and it has been cleared out. So you can imagine like a vacuum has cleared it out. Nobody, for most of the world, people are not infiltrated by reptilians anymore. And if you are holding on to that belief system, then you may create that reality. You may perhaps although it's dwindling. So what they're telling me is that this is dwindling. Very few of us are ever going to come in contact with reptilians again. Very few in the physical body. Very few of us are actually going to ever experience or see or hear abductions anymore. The hybridization program is happening in the fourth dimensional field. It's not happening on the planet, and it has no benefit for humanity. The hybridization program is not here to benefit humanity. And all those beautiful, beautiful spirits that volunteered and participated in the hybridization program did it to be a part of that program and are now existing in the fourth dimensional field where they were intended to exist. And so we are starting to understand there is no negative alien plan. There was for a very long time. There isn't anymore. It can't come along with us in the ascension process. It can't, those consciousnesses, those vibrations, the vibration of holding a quote unquote, I think I saw the term, the hashtag, negative alien agenda. Okay. Side note. Anything that says negative, anything that's fear-based, anything that is creating any sort of doubt, darkness, any of that is not part of this reality that we are walking into. It is not part of the evolution of consciousness. So is it important to acknowledge that it's happened? Yes. Is it important to acknowledge that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that believe still in this consciousness? Yes. Is it the reality right now that we are in right now? Not in mine, not in other people's. No, it's not. And slowly but surely, more and more people are going to start to remember and recognize that this all happened. And it's time to let it go. And it's time to step into a new reality, not based in fear, not based on these beings coming in any longer, understanding that they're not here anymore. And again, for all of those human beings that are having these experiences still, that's okay. You know, I will never say that somebody else's reality is not real or is not true. There are many different realities to live in. What I am saying is that there are new realities and new paradigms that we are being opened to. And that's what I'm sharing. And that's what these beings want me to share with you. That what we have been programmed to believe happened. What we have been programmed to believe is not happening anymore. But if you continue to believe in the past and make it the present, it has just as much power. So it's almost like the reason I deeply, deeply believe that the reason I'm being asked to share this information is not only to kind of open people's eyes, like maybe just think about it. Just think about it. Does this resonate with you anymore? Does this make sense to you anymore? Does this feel good to you? You know, and think about history, even our own human history. You know, if we continue to live, and many people do, but if you continue to live in the past, if you continue to live in what happened in the past, in the present moment, you will continue to hold that vibration. You will continue to live in that belief system. You will continue to live in that. That's what happened. That's happening now. This is it. This is it. This is it. You won't be able to step out of it. And unfortunately, this is a huge belief system. Because it was so powerful, because it was so detrimental, because it was so traumatic for so many people, because it was such a huge part of Earth's history, right? This part of Earth's history was huge. When I went to the Dulce base, I felt like I was standing in front of a piece of history that took my breath away. I was deeply saddened. I related it to being like if you were to go to like the Nazi concentration camps, right? You stood in front of this place and you knew that so many humans suffered and died, right? And so when I'm standing in front of this mountain, knowing how the potency of this base and what was happening here, it breaks my heart. But what was so obvious and so clear and drilled into me and that I physically felt was that it's not happening anymore. It's not happening. There was a clear energy at that base. There was a clearness. It was almost like there was nothing there. There are no more races coming into that base. If people are saying that, God bless them, let them continue to say that, but they're not saying that based on their own information by sitting at that base and feeling it, because if they went to that base and felt it, they would know that there are no dark entities, dark beings, dark aliens coming in any longer. It's not happening. It's not happening around the entire planet. So it's a reality we're walking into. It's an old reality that we have to let go of. And it's really challenging because we have been told that, there are powerful people in charge that have been taken over by dark forces. That did happen. That is not happening now. They are human beings back in their physical form as spirit that have chosen this path and are playing it out perfectly, divinely, exactly how they're supposed to be, whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not, whether we believe it or not. Whether we think that they're doing it right or not. That's not for us to decide. We're not here to do that. So if you start to hear these things, if you follow these types of belief systems, if you follow these paradigms, these star beings that I channel, these star beings that communicate through me, they want you guys to start to open up. They want all of us to start to open up and expand into higher states of consciousness. And one of the very powerful consciousnesses that a lot of spiritual light workers are getting stuck in is this idea, which happened, but this belief that we are still being infiltrated by these dark forces, by these dark beings, by these races of fourth dimensional beings, that we are being taken over, that there is an alien agenda that is happening on the planet. It's not. What's happening on the planet now is that humanity is waking up. What's happening on the planet now is those humans that you think are dark are just playing out their role. They're not infiltrated any longer by dark forces. That's not happening anymore. And we have the choice to believe whatever we want to believe. And, I'm putting this out there, and I'm sure there's a ton of people that are going to absolutely think this is nuts. And that's okay. I'm still going to keep sharing all of the stuff that's coming in. Part of the reason this was so challenging for me and I had to sit for an entire week and a half to integrate it was because I don't want to talk about this. I don't know anything about these things. I've never been called to learn about any of this. And that's the reason. Now I understand. Because I have to be able to share this information in such purity, with so much clarity, that there's nothing else coming in and fogging the information that's coming in. I don't listen, I don't read, I don't watch anything about this. I've seen a couple hashtags on Instagram. It frustrates me. I get off and I don't listen, watch, or read. Because the energy that's coming in, the information and messages that are coming in have to be so pure that I can't allow other people's messages to come in and fog it up. So just know that what I'm saying, my human ego doesn't want to share, but the beings of light are really, really, really happy right now that I'm sharing this. And I think this is going to impact people on many different levels, because you're going to start to, what they want humans to start to do is open our eyes. This isn't just about understanding that we're divine human beings. This isn't necessarily about connecting to the higher self. This isn't just about that. It's also about looking at how humans are programmed. Looking at how we have the ability to choose our reality. And the other thing they want me to share is this understanding, this deep, deep understanding, or beginning to understand, that these powerful, beautiful light beings are taking care of it. Again, once we hit that 50% quotient, right? It's almost like it tipped. And like I've said in my last video, once the light moves, you can't take light back, right? So you can't stop the light from continuing, but you can. There were moments where there was major destruction and it was like, oh God, humans are actually going to destroy themselves, and they were actually going to destroy the planet. So it had nothing to do with energy. It had everything to do with actual physical destruction, which is a totally different thing. But once the energy hit 50%, then it was going. It was like, okay, the earth and humanity are now going to be ascending. They're in the clear, so to speak. And then these beings of light could come in and start to assist us, which is what they've been waiting for thousands and thousands of years, is that they can now assist us. So all of these horrible things that are happening, they're taken care of. We don't have to worry about it. It's very difficult for people to understand. It's very difficult for people to open up to. And that's okay. The more I share about this, the more I regurgitate this information over and over again, eventually it will sink in. And people will start to walk around and start to think. Think. Start thinking. Instead of just listening, reading, watching, and just letting it be a part of your reality, think. Does this make sense to me? Do I actually believe this? Start to pay attention to the amount of messages that are based around fear. Anything that is given to you that is based around fear, that is based around evil, that is based around anything that's negative, be aware of that. Start to listen to that. Start to watch that. We're out of that. We're out of it. It's a reality that you can stay in, but there's many other realities that we're walking into. So allow yourself to start to pay attention to that. Allow yourself to look up and look at the new realities that are being presented to you. Hopefully more and more people will start talking about this stuff, but there are no more, quote unquote, Greys, Anunnaki, Reptilians, any other race that may have a name that I'm not aware of. They are not on the physical earth plane. And I say this with this sort of determination and commitment because it's what I've been given and I feel it in my core. And eventually, in a couple of years, thousands of people will be believing this. Okay? They will believe it. It's just going to take some time. Just know this, and allow it to sink in energetically. And if none of this makes sense and you want to scream at the video camera thing, the YouTube channel, by all means do that, and hopefully eventually it will sink in, it will make sense. Just start to question what you're listening to. It's a new consciousness. There's way too much light on the planet now for these other beings to come in. Think about it. It makes sense. That's the other thing. It's like, oh shit, that totally makes sense. Think about the fact that, I heard somebody speak once that the Anunnaki seeded the earth. That's impossible. Okay, so if you start to think about energy, you start to think about frequency, you start to think about dimensions, okay? When the earth existed, when the earth was created and designed as a being of light, it was a fifth dimensional frequency, okay? The Anunnaki exist in a fourth dimensional frequency. The Anunnaki cannot seed a higher frequency than itself. It makes no sense. So if you start to understand on a very physical, physics, energetic level, okay, start to educate yourself on this, right? You'll be able to understand. It's like, oh, you're so right. I'm looking at the time. Okay. It doesn't make any sense. Things just start to make sense as we remember. Things start to make sense as we wake up. That's what ascension is. We're remembering. We're waking up. It's like, oh yeah, of course. Duh, that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. So how the earth was seeded was by high frequency light beings, not by fourth dimensional beings. So that's a whole other thing. I am going to do a video directly after this if I have time. Let me see. Oh, maybe not. But a little bit later this afternoon, I'm going to do another video on what it means to be a spirit in a body, and how to start to look at every other spirit in a physical form, right? And not right or wrong, good or bad, and the choice that each spirit made. But that's a different video next. Okay, that's it. I know this was a lot of information. Hopefully it was clear. I'm sure I'm going to be doing a lot more of this stuff and go into more detail about these things. I hope this was useful in some way. I hope somehow this shifts the way you view your reality out there. And again, if it doesn't make sense, then obviously don't hold on to it. Let it go. We have free will. We can choose any reality we want. I'm just opening us up to a different reality, and a reality that these beautiful beings of light told me. So beautiful. I'm so glad we came together to listen to this, to hear this, to feel this. God knows what else is coming, but I'm going to keep sharing it with all of you. And that's my commitment, to just keep sharing whatever comes through. It might take some time to integrate, but I will be sharing it with you guys. So thank you for listening. If this resonates with you, share it, share it, share it, share it, share it. Share this video. Get it out. Get this information out. Let people start to expand their consciousness. Let people start to understand other ways of viewing the world and realities and paradigms. You know, let's start opening our eyes even more to different ways of being, and stop focusing on the past. Understanding that it's done. There is no more. We're in a totally new frequency, new space, new consciousness, new awareness, new paradigm, new reality. And it's going to get bigger, better and better and better. And the old is going to get farther and farther away. The past is going to get farther and farther away. The past is going to get denser and denser and denser as we keep moving up. That's how it shifts. Okay, I love you guys all so much. This was under an hour, which I'm extremely excited about. I will see you guys next time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. Thank you for sharing this video if you feel called to share it. And I will talk to you all very soon. All my love to you. Bye.